You ever think that one of your friends might be an alien in disguise? No? Well, they're thinking it about you! Welcome to Top 10 Nerd. I'm your host Andrew Boyd, and today I will be attempting to explain the plot of Marvel's Secret Invasion. That way, you can complain about the TV show not being comic accurate without having to go to the trouble of actually reading it. Let's dive in, starting with issue 1. Secret Invasion happens after the events of Civil War. In the aftermath of the conflict, Iron Man is the head of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Avengers. Captain America is dead, and the superheroes who are against registration are fugitives, working as the Secret Avengers, led by Luke Cage. Iron Man discovers that a Skrull has been impersonating Elektra. He learns that there is no way to know who the Skrulls are while they are alive, but once they're dead, they go back to their alien form. Fearing that this could be a sign of a coming invasion, he brings in Reed Richards and Hank Pym, who at this point in his career is going by Yellow Jacket, to study the alien corpse and hopefully discover a way to tell who is a Skrull and who is not. Before they can get into it, Iron Man gets word that a Skrull spacecraft is crash landing on Earth and will land in the Savage Lands. If you don't know what the Savage Lands are, it's basically a tropical island with dinosaurs that used to be Magneto's base of operations. Iron Man assembles the Avengers and sets off to investigate the crash, leaving Mr. Fantastic and Yellow Jacket to continue studying the alien. Not wanting to be left out of the loop, Luke Cage and the Secret Avengers steal a Quinjet and also go to the Savage Lands. Luke wants to tear open the ship to see what's inside, but Iron Man shows up and starts whining and trying to place Luke under arrest. Despite Carol Danvers, who at this point is going by Miss Marvel, not Captain Marvel, despite her trying to calm down Luke and Tony, the two factions of superheroes almost come to blows. Before this can happen, several Skrull sleeper agents begin their attack across the globe, taking out the Sword satellite, the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier, Thunderbolts Mountain, and sending the Baxter Building into the negative zone. A Skrull, who has been posing as the Avengers' butler, Jarvis, uploads an alien virus to Tony's Iron Man suit, which disables his suit and also makes him sick. The crashed Skrull ship opens, revealing doubles of several superheroes, all claiming to be the real superheroes. Back in the lab, Mr. Fantastic thinks that he has uncovered a way to determine who is a Skrull and who is a human, but before he can reveal it, Hank Pym reveals himself to be a Skrull and shoots Richards, making him more of a wad of chewing gum than a man. And that brings us to Issue 2. Issue 2 is relatively uneventful, as it mostly comprises of the Avengers and the Secret Avengers teaming up to fight the mystery doubles who have arrived on the Skrull ship, while dealing with the paranoia of not knowing who they can trust and who is a Skrull in disguise. While this is happening, a group of Super Skrulls, Skrulls who have the powers of various superheroes, attack New York City and begin firing on civilians. Moving on to Issue 3. The S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier has gone down in the middle of the Bermuda Triangle. Maria Hill navigates her way through the bowels of the sinking airship, and when she reaches the deck, is greeted by the Skrull who has been impersonating Jarvis, who demands that she surrender. Yellow Jacket shows up at Camp Hammond, a training ground for newly registered heroes, and tells the Initiative that they need to prepare for the upcoming battle and go into New York to fight the Skrulls. In the city, the young Avengers are locked in battle with the invading Skrulls, barely holding them off when the Initiative shows up to support the young heroes. Meanwhile, in the Savage Lands, Carol Danvers drops off Tony Stark at an abandoned lab to try and fix his suit, while she sets off for the city to try and help out there. So, Iron Man is by himself trying to deal with his suit and his illness when Spider-Woman shows up and reveals that she is actually the Empress of the Skrulls. She tells Tony that he is actually a Skrull sleeper agent who had their mind wiped, and that the events of Civil War were actually part of a plan to divide the heroes, making it easier to conquer the Earth. Tony, of course, finds this surprising and isn't sure what to believe. Is it better to be a smart invader who started a civil war to divide the heroes just in time for a massive invasion, or to be an allegedly really smart superhero who accomplishes the same thing by accident? Who's to say? Back in New York, the heroes are getting their butts kicked by the Skrull. They are being subdued, and Vision is getting his mind blown. Just when all seems lost, you know who shows up? Nick Fury rolls up with his brand new band of Howling Commandos, ready to kick those Skrulls to the curb. In issue 4, we learn that Mr. Fantastic is alive and is being held prisoner in space on one of the Skrull ships. Back in New York, the Howling Commandos, the Initiative, and the Young Avengers manage to beat back the invading Super Skrull. Miss Marvel, who, just to remind you, is Carol Danvers at this point and not Kamala Khan, shows up, but Fury thinks she's a Skrull and shoots her with his energy gun, leaving her to be overwhelmed by Skrull. Back in the Savage Land, the Skrull Empress continues to try and convince Iron Man that he's a Skrull. Black Widow overhears this conversation, but is interrupted by the versions of Jean Grey and Beast who emerged from the crashed ship. She manages to take them out, and they are revealed to be Skrulls. The Spider-Woman Skrull escapes, and Black Widow talks to Tony and tells him that her spy instincts tell her he's not a Skrull, and that the Skrull Empress was just messing with him. Wolverine shows up, and the three heroes talk about their situation and agree that they need Mr. Fantastic. Meanwhile, in space, Agent Brand, the head of S.W.O.R.D., is still alive, floating around in the cosmos. She manages to sneak on board and decides to mount a rescue mission to save Reed Richards. Back in New York, the Hood and his villainous friends watch the invasion on television. The Hood decides that they will prepare to intervene and help the heroes save Earth, as no Earth would be bad for business. Thor turns up with Captain America in tow, which is odd because we were all under the impression that he was dead. Issue 5. At Thunderbolt's Mountain. The Thunderbolts are being attacked by the Skrull who was impersonating Captain Marvel, the Kree warrior Mar-Vell, not Carol Danvers, who is Miss Marvel instead of Kamala Khan, who is no one at this point. The leader of the Thunderbolts, Norman Osborn, realizes that the Skrull can't bring himself to kill any of them. He talks to the Skrull and discovers that he was a sleeper agent who, until he was activated, truly believed himself to be the heroic Captain Marvel and is having trouble committing to the bad guy thing. Rather than continue attacking the Thunderbolts, Mar-Vell leaves. Nick Fury brings the heroes to his New York base, where they witness a broadcast where several Skrulls who have been posing as celebrities and world leaders give the people of Earth a really long-winded speech that essentially boils down to assimilate or be destroyed. Thankfully, back in space, Agent Brand has managed to rescue Mr. Fantastic on the Skrull ship. They fall under attack, but are saved by the Skrull Captain Marvel, who has decided that world domination is overrated. Brand and Richards make their way back to Earth to try and save the day. Back on the sinking SHIELD helicarrier, Agent Hill pulls a sneaky with a life model decoy and escapes the Skrull, blowing up the helicarrier in the process. Meanwhile, back in the Savage Lands, the heroes are all arguing about who is and isn't a Skrull when Brand and Reed show up in their spaceship. Reed fires a beam that reveals everyone's true form, making the heroes able to attack and defeat the secret invaders among them. By the way, Iron Man's not a Skrull. Leading us into Issue 6. Issue 6 opens with the Skrull who is posing as Mar-Vell, who goes by the superhero name Captain Marvel, because Carol Danvers is still Miss Marvel at this point in the continuity, who is not a Skrull. I'm getting lost. What was I talking about? Oh, yeah. The Skrull dies in an explosion, but not before telling Marvel Boy that he must save the Earth. We see a montage of all the heroes over the globe fighting off the Skrull. Alpha Flight doesn't get a panel, but I'm assuming it's because they were having a fight so awesome that the writers thought that including it would overshadow the rest of the comic. Back in New York City, all the heroes who were in the Savage Lands team up with all the heroes who are fighting in the city to fight the Skrull forces. They are soon joined by Thor, Captain America, the Thunderbolts, as well as the Hood and the other villains. This unlikely team bands together and they take on the Skrull army. Issue 7. As the battle rages, Spider-Man remains optimistic, saying that things can't be too bad because the Watcher has not shown up. So anyway, the Watcher shows up, and the heroes and Skrulls continue to fight. In Avengers Tower, Jessica Jones, who at this point is married to Luke Cage and has a child, Danielle Cage, watches the battle on television with Jarvis. She decides that she needs to help her fellow heroes and leaves her child with Jarvis, not knowing that he is a Skrull in disguise. Marvel Boy joins the battle, and Clint Barton, who is in his Ronin phase at this point in continuity, manages to hit the Spider-Woman Skrull Empress with an arrow. It seriously injures her, but she does not die. Just when the Skrull forces seem beaten, they reveal their secret weapon. Turns out, before the secret invasion, the Skrull, posing as Hank Pym, had given Janet Janet Van Dyne, the Wasp, a growth formula that had been tampered with. They activate their plan, and as Wasp becomes giant, she becomes a giant chemical bomb, which is making all of the heroes deathly ill. In the final issue of the series, Thor is able to spin his hammer really fast, causing a tornado that is able to take out Janet before she causes any serious damage. This unfortunately kills her in the process. This of course leaves all the heroes really angry, and they prepare to attack the injured Skrull Empress. Before any of the heroes can make a move on her, Norman Osborn kills her with a gunshot to the head. The heroes take out the remaining Skrull ships and find a ship which contains all of the missing people the Skrulls have been impersonating. While this is happening, the Fantastic Four manage to close the Negative Zone portal, although the Baxter building has been pretty much destroyed. When the real Jarvis is found on the Skrull prisoner ship, Jessica Jones realizes her mistake and rushes back to Avengers Tower, only to realize that the Skrull Jarvis is gone and has taken her baby with him. Tony tries to chum it up with Thor after the battle, but the God of Thunder is having none of it, and tells Tony he considers him responsible for the invasion, as he had divided the heroes with the Civil War and failed to prevent the invasion despite being the leader of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Avengers. This sentiment is echoed by the President, who fires Stark and replaces him with the man who saved the Earth from the Skrull Empress, Norman Osborn. The President puts S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Avengers under the Thunderbolt's banner and gives Osborn control of the entire operation. This of course thrills Norman, who meets up with some of his supervillain pals to plot and scheme about how they are going to use their new power. Well, that is the plot of Secret Invasion. It's a fun read with plenty of crossover issues that we haven't gotten into here, but are definitely worth checking out. Any other iconic comic story arcs you want me to break down for you? Let me know in the comments below, and remember to like and subscribe for more Top 10 Nerd.